Luckily, your friend was only mostly dead.
King's Isle. Mitch needs to be looked at. For those who don't know, this is Miracle Mitch. He was introduced in 2014 and is probably one of the worst additions in the game. Like, I actually think Zigzag might be a better addition than Miracle Mitch. It's so bad that I put out a poll a little while ago asking if Miracle Mitch should be looked at, and over 95% of people think he should be changed. So after my epic video, which did better on views than I expected, I was planning on releasing a second part where I detail each individual epic and how I think it should be retooled. But then I realized, because Miracle Mitch exists in the game, because Miracle Mitch causes so many direct problems in Pirate, and me wanting things like an overall rebalancing of the combat system gets heavily interfered by whatever species he is, he needs to be explained first. In the good old days of 2012, Pirate101 had a very forgiving combat system. As it was a game nobody played before, it makes logical sense to have a mechanic where if you die, you can simply heal back up and retry. If your companions died in battle, similar to Pokemon, you can simply take them to a Pokemon Center, or in Pirate's case, a Life Fountain, and it would heal all your allies back as well as yourself. Although the 2012 combat system had some poor aspects, such as Buccaneer being super weak, which is why Turn the Tide existed, I'm glad it's not a problem at all, or Witch Doctor being super weak, I'm glad the changes to make Witch Doctor stronger aren't problematic either, or bringing in any companion you had on your team, even if it was the Water Boy's Water Boy. Besides the combat, Pirate101 was by no means a perfect game upon its creation. The game had a slow build-up of the actual Arc 1 story, there's plenty of unviable companions you recruit as you play through the game, and the one I'm going to hone in on for this video was that the gold system was, and still is, kind of bad. One of Pirate's underlooked issues is the lack of side content, where Wizard 101 has gardening, crafting, decathlon, fishing, and monstrology to name a couple. Pirate doesn't. We got the pet system, and that update sucks. And PvP isn't a user of gold because in Wizard, treasure cards are used for PvP as well as PvE, but doubloons aren't for Pirate. So there really isn't much use for gold in the game. What King's Isle did to compensate was making the few necessary users of gold into gold sinks. For those who don't know, a gold sink is a way for games to make you have to dump your gold you receive from defeating enemies or finishing quests as a way to counteract inflation. This does make sense since Pirate doesn't have a lot of ways to spend your gold, so you just sit with max gold forever. Buying potions is about 35k a pop, while buying training totems used to be a few shekels, is now 10k a pop. By the way, why is it still only you can buy 10 and then you can't buy any more? Whatever, that's a different topic. These few gold sinks were for sure bad, but buying Yum potions was more so a luxury and not required. So with only tomes and ships being your main purchases, it wasn't too bad. Then Pirate101 received a break in terms of updates for about 5 months, and out came the update that steered Pirate into the game it currently is in. There were a lot of additions that came from the May 12th update. Some were great, such as companion orders, where companions you don't want to use can instead get you resources such as nautical XP or pet snacks. The introduction of pets, although it has its own problems, still is a good addition. And being able to mark and recall your location was also a great addition. On the other hand, some additions weren't that great. For example, I to this day don't understand why the doubloon system, which was introduced in this update, is still as wonky as in 2014. Cool addition to the game, just so awkward and finicky. Why is it only 20 doubloons max? Why can't we sell them to the bazaar or something to get rid of the ones we don't want? Why can't we at least trade doubloons to our other pirates without a third party? I don't know, and I don't get it. But I would confidently claim the worst change that came from this update was the wound system. KI decided to change how companions are revived from this simple, bring them to a life fountain, to making them wounded and needing to be tended to. When your companion would fall in battle, they now become unusable for a period of time and you are given 3 options. You either had the option to keep them at bed rest, which meant they couldn't join a fight until they regained their energy. You put them into a wounded state, which means they enter combat at lower health, so you end up entering fights at a disadvantage. Or the third option, which is you have to take them to Miracle Mitch to revive them at their best. It's a simple concept, and taken at surface level, it makes sense. KI wants to incentivize you, the player, to not over-rely on the same few companions throughout the game. So the question becomes, why does a poll I put out about Miracle Mitch look like this? In the Miracle Mitch case, as a concept, having a system designed so that you can't use the same 4 to 5 companions every time isn't necessarily bad. The problem lies in how unforgiving Miracle Mitch and the wound system is. This post by the Atmoplex brings up that Miracle Mitch's revival prices are calculated by 12.5% of the total XP a companion has. So, for example, the reason Mitch isn't a problem for lower levels is that they don't have much XP. Reviving a companion at, say, level 15 only costs about 1500 gold. The issue with this is that most of the player base consists of players who either log on regularly or old players who have come back. These two groups of players are not low-level pirates, they are max level. And because there is a flatline calculation of the price for Miracle Mitch, the higher XP a companion has, the more that it costs. At level 70, it is 36,000 gold to revive one companion. At 75, 41,000. And if you decide to skip the cost because you don't have the money at the time, the cost of reviving a companion wounded and off bed rest doubles. Now, before I talk about the problems this system creates, I first want to address KI's rebuttal. It is a gold sink. As I mentioned earlier, because the gold economy is very small, they decided to increase the price of everything, including reviving your companions, to compensate. Let's talk about the problems now. The first problem is the counter-argument to KI's claim. Their logic makes sense at a glance, but as with other additions in Arc 1.5, they have glaring holes once you look deeper into it. Sure, they are right that you will have a lump sum of useless gold without things like Miracle Mitch. On my privateer, I have so many random snacks I bought just because I keep reaching maximum gold. The problem is that I'm not most people. I have 3 accounts readily available for me to farm gold on. Most players don't. Most players only have 1 account to play on. The problem with Mitch is that he indirectly makes getting more gold harder. If your 3 best companions fall in battle, and assuming they are level 70, you would need over 100,000 gold to revive them at their best. You can't get more gold if your companions are already on bed rest. You have to play with a crutch and either playing with them wounded with even less health, making them have a higher likelihood to die again and the Mitch prices go up even more. You can use weaker companions than your 3 best, or wait a third of a day to use them without paying the price, just so you can have the gold to revive them in the present or in the future. I don't think any of these options are good, and I think it is a big contributor as to why Arc 2 is so difficult and why people quit the game. The second problem is the issue with oncoming difficulty. I recently made a video about the difficulty issues of Arc 2 and how Mitch becomes an even larger problem because of it. For casual players who don't know the meta strategies, they are definitely going to lose multiple companions throughout Arc 2. In my opinion, mainline content shouldn't be insanely challenging because losing on the same fight 5 times in a row doesn't exactly spell a fun time for most players. They just want to see where the story goes. The part I do want to bring up in that video is that I mentioned that I do actually want hard fights in the game, as long as they are kept as being side optional content. We recently got the Obsidian Chokaka boss, and I really like the fight. This is what I want to have. And hey, Bradley Barnacle, Dom, I'm almost positive you guys worked on this fight. Marvelous job. Here's the issue. I decided to go in and do the Chokaka boss blindly for my first run, and I lost multiple companions. I am getting punished by spending over 100,000 gold when I'm trying to learn a new boss's mechanics. KI, if you want to make really challenging fights with unique mechanics for the players to figure out, again, fully on board with it, you cannot punish players like this when they fail the first few times. I saw a message in the Pirate Discord about the boss itself, and although I agree with what they are saying, there is a huge problem. I agree that it is lame that a few bad apples only want to do the cheese strategy. By the way, I don't think this cheese strat should be a thing. I'll leave a text wall here if you're interested in my thoughts on it. The problem with this is that I completely understand why people have this sentiment. Not only is it much faster to do so, but you don't lose companions this way. I can defeat the Choka boss 25 times in 1 to 2 turns with this full stop method, and I never lose companions. So I never have to pay the outrageous amount to revive my companions to begin with. Going forward, I think Miracle Mitch will be an ever-increasing problem when designing difficult fights for players to farm. The third problem is that it creates bottlenecked gameplay. I mentioned in my epic video how certain epics fundamentally break classes such as Overwatch 5 and Ready to Spell 5. Yeah, you really thought I wasn't going to bring up these epics? Come on now. I will do it every video if I have to. A counter argument I have heard in defense of these epics is that it does allow the player to not lose companions. Now, although I think this is a poor and overall NPC take, I can understand why people draw this conclusion. Because, well, it is really nice to never lose companions because of knockback epics. When you have a system that heavily punishes players for losing fights, you incentivize them to play the style that offers the lowest chance to lose. What this ends up doing is it makes everybody play the same way. Knockback epics, old scratch, AoE. Anything else? You start setting yourself and everyone you are playing with up for failure. So now let's talk about the solutions. As I do with any part of solutions, I'm not here to say my views are 100% correct. It's just what I believe makes the most logical sense. If you don't agree, you can leave your input in the comments. I'll probably respond to it, and hopefully I don't sound passive-aggressive when I do so. It's not what I'm trying to do. When I put out the poll for Miracle Mitch, I gave 2 options in terms of changes. Either revert it to the old system where life fountains fully heal everyone, including the pirate, or drastically lower the gold to revive your companions. I personally prefer the second option, and I will explain why. This might be a hot take, but I actually side with KI when it comes to the gold economy and needing a gold sink. I do agree that because there's little to spend your gold on, KI has to arbitrarily inflate the prices of the few spendables in the game to compensate. I also think that simply increasing the maximum gold amount doesn't necessarily fix the overall problem with gold either. Now, I'm not saying I wouldn't want the gold cap to increase, but it is a band-aid wound fix. For someone like me who has 3 accounts to do the machine on, I can get max gold within an hour. That's great. Most people can't do it. So if the gold cap were to be increased to say 400k, this really only benefits the dedicated players who can efficiently farm gold. Casuals, on the other hand, doesn't fix much. Their companions constantly die anyway, so they can't get to max gold. So here is how I think KI should approach Miracle Mitch. The Ammoplex post notes that the price to revive a companion is 12.5% of the companion's total XP. I think this should be cut down to 2%. This will make it so at level 75, you are only paying 6.6k gold per companion revival. This could also be pushed onto other expensive things like training totems and potions. That is much more fair to the average and even dedicated player. However, don't get mad at me about this one, I also think that the couple of insane gold farms should be heavily nerfed so you can't reach max gold within a few runs. The Machine, Manchu Tower, and Cabining Rook's second fight are a few examples of ways to obtain max gold in a very short amount of time. Group chests shouldn't give 10k gold per fight. I know you pet fanatics will hate me for this one. Believe me, I help people with pets all the time. However, I do think it is objectively a fair trade-off. You can lower the price of things, but also make it harder to obtain gold as compensation. This doesn't affect the casuals playing the game, however. If they're just questing through the game, they're not going to be farming Mumanchu. They're not going to be farming the Machine or Cabining Rook as much. They're not going to be doing those things. It doesn't really affect them. At the end of the day, you have to be focusing and prioritizing the casual players. And to the people who say, well, I'm just going to quit the game because it's going to be stupid now. No, you're not going to quit the game. You've been playing the game for 12, 13 years. You're never going to leave. Shut up. The world works on trade-offs. And if changes to the gameplay are to be discussed, the wound system and Miracle Mitch should be addressed first. I'll see you all later.